may the Schwartz be with you.
May the Schwartz be with you.
In 1987, while Star Wars still dominated sci-fi culture, Mel Brooks unleashed his comedic genius on the galaxy far, far away. Spaceballs wasn't just another parody. It was a meticulous dissection of sci-fi tropes wrapped in Brooks' signature absurdist humor. With a modest $22.7 million budget and a somewhat underwhelming $38.1 million box office, few could have predicted this film's enduring legacy.
Spaceballs the flamethrower! The kids love this one.
What began as a straightforward spoof evolved into something much more significant, a comedic landmark that has remarkably outlived many of the films it once mocked. From Rick Moranis' scene-stealing dark helmet to the brilliant practical effects that still hold up today, Spaceballs represents comedy at warp speed. Through its clever meta-commentary on merchandising and filmmaking itself,
My hair! He shot my hair! Bitch!
Brooks crafted something that transcended simple parody to become a beloved classic that continues to find new audiences decades later. When we examine the brilliance of Spaceballs, we must look beyond the jokes to appreciate the technical craftsmanship that made this parody soar. Mel Brooks didn't just mock science fiction, he created a visually stunning comedy that required genuine filmmaking expertise.
Shit!
Consider the film's centerpiece, Spaceball 1. This massive ship that transforms into Mega Maid represents one of the most ambitious practical effects in comedy cinema. Unlike today's CGI-dominated landscape, Brooks relied on meticulously crafted models and camera techniques to achieve this ridiculous yet impressive transformation. The sequence where the ship converts from menacing destroyer to cosmic housemaid required weeks of planning and precise execution, a testament to Brooks' commitment to visual comedy. Equally impressive is the creation of Pizza the Hut, a grotesque parody that required hours of puppetry work and food-based practical effects. The character remains disgustingly memorable precisely because it exists physically in the frame, rather than as a digital creation. Effects designer Rick Lazzarini spent countless hours perfecting the melting aesthetic that made this character simultaneously revolting and hilarious. The production design brilliantly amplifies the comedy through visual exaggeration.
Come back, you fat-bearded bitch!
Dark Helmet's comically oversized headgear serves both as Star Wars parody
Have a nice day.
Thank you!
and perfect physical comedy prop for Rick Moranis. The intentionally unwieldy design created genuine physical challenges for Moranis, lending authenticity to his bumbling villain performance. Similarly, the oversized control panels, ridiculously long corridors of Spaceball 1, and exaggerated costumes all serve the comedy while maintaining a surprisingly cohesive aesthetic. Brooks faced significant challenges balancing recognizable parody with original comedy. Working at MGM provided creative freedom unavailable at most studios, allowing him to push boundaries with fourth wall breaks and self-referential humor. The famous instant cassette scene where characters watch themselves in real time wasn't just funny. It was technically complex and conceptually ahead of its time. What many viewers miss is how Brooks used lighting and cinematography to heighten comedic moments. The desert sequences deliberately mimic the harsh lighting of Star Wars Tatooine scenes, creating visual familiarity before subverting expectations with gags like the comically oversized comb. Similarly, the stark lighting contrasts aboard Spaceball 1 create a serious visual tone that makes the absurdist humor land more effectively. The film's sound design also deserves recognition.
Yogurt! I hate yogurt!
From the deliberately off-brand soundtrack cues to the perfectly timed sound effects, like the plop when Dark Helmet's mask is lowered. Audio elements enhance visual gags throughout. The now iconic ludicrous speed sequence combined lighting effects, camera work, and sound design to create one of cinema's most memorable comedy moments.
We're gonna have to go right to ludicrous speed.
What elevates Spaceballs beyond mere parody is this meticulous attention to filmmaking craft. Brooks understood that for comedy to truly resonate, it needed the same technical foundation as the films it satirized, perhaps explaining why it continues to delight audiences while lesser parodies have faded into obscurity. The brilliance of Spaceballs extends far beyond its technical achievements, with much of the film's enduring appeal stemming from its exceptional cast and their unforgettable performances. At the center of this comedic galaxy is Rick Moranis as the unforgettable Dark Helmet, a performance that transformed a simple Darth Vader parody into something uniquely hilarious. Moranis brings remarkable physical comedy to the role.
Hot! Too hot!
Using his diminutive stature in contrast with the oversized helmet to create visual humor that works on multiple levels. His ability to seamlessly transition between intimidating villain voice and neurotic whining creates a character far more memorable than
They must have hypertests on that thing. And what do we got on this thing? A Cuisinart? No, sir.
a standard parody deserves. Bill Pullman's turn as Lone Star represents an often overlooked achievement. As his first major film role, Pullman faced the unenviable task of playing the straight man amid chaos while still parodying Han Solo's swaggering confidence.
On this ship, you're to refer to me as idiot, not you, Captain.
His deadpan delivery provides the perfect counterbalance to the more outlandish characters surrounding him. When he delivers lines like funny, she doesn't look Drewish, Pullman manages to wink at the audience without breaking character, a subtle comedic skill that grounds the film's wildest moments. Perhaps no character better exemplifies the film's blend of parody and originality than John Candy's Barf, the half-man, half-dog Mog. Candy brings extraordinary warmth and timing to a character that could have been a one-note joke. His physical commitment, wearing a cumbersome mechanical tail that actually wagged during filming, demonstrates the dedication behind the silliness.
One princess for 1 million space bucks.
Candy's natural charisma makes Barf instantly likable, creating emotional stakes that elevate the story beyond mere parody. The film's most memorable scenes often arise from the perfect marriage of these performances with Brooks' visual gags. The combing the desert sequence works brilliantly because of the deadpan delivery from the officers literally dragging giant combs through sand, culminating in the perfectly timed "we ain't found shit"
We ain't found shit.
from a frustrated Tim Russ. Similarly, the merchandising scene, Spaceballs the Flamethrower, the kids love this one, succeeds through Brooks' enthusiastic pitchman delivery and Moranis' childlike excitement at the toys. Behind these performances lay casting challenges few viewers realize. Brooks initially approached several Star Wars actors for cameos, but most declined, wary of being associated with a parody. Harrison Ford reportedly refused to even read the script. This forced Brooks to build his cast from comedic talent rather than nostalgic cameos, ultimately strengthening the film by prioritizing performance over recognition. The cast chemistry extends to smaller roles as well. Joan Rivers' voice work as Dot Matrix infuses the C-3PO parody with distinctly feminine neurosis, while Dom DeLuise's Pizza the Hut performance transforms a visual gag into a memorably disgusting character. Even brief appearances, like John Hurt's cameo recreating his famous Alien scene, demonstrate Brooks' understanding that great parody requires actors fully committed to the absurdity. What makes these performances truly exceptional is how they transcend simple mimicry. Rather than merely imitating Star Wars characters, the cast creates memorable comedic personalities that stand independently, explaining why Spaceballs resonates even with viewers unfamiliar with the source material.
Careful, you idiot. I said across her nose, not up it.
Sorry, sir. I'm doing my best.
Through these performances, Brooks transformed what could have been disposable satire into enduring comedy that continues to find new audiences decades after its release. Spaceballs experienced one of cinema's most fascinating journeys from critical disappointment to beloved classic. Upon its 1987 release, critics largely dismissed Brooks' sci-fi parody as uneven and derivative. The New York Times called it an amiable but surprisingly airless send-up, while Gene Siskel declared it a huge disappointment. With a modest $38.1 million box office against its $22.7 million budget, Spaceballs initially appeared destined for obscurity rather than greatness. This lukewarm reception contrasts dramatically with the film's current cultural standing. What happened in the intervening decades to transform a supposed comedic misfire into a touchstone of parody cinema? The answer lies predominantly with home video and cable television. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, Spaceballs found its true audience through repeated showings on HBO and brisk VHS rentals. Divorced from theatrical expectations and enjoyed in more intimate settings, the film's multi-layered humor, from broad visual gags to subtle sci-fi references, connected with viewers in ways critics had missed. The film's once controversial elements have also evolved in reception. Some of Brooks' more juvenile humor, particularly bathroom jokes, initially drew criticism from reviewers seeking the satirical sophistication of his earlier works like Blazing Saddles. Yet modern audiences, accustomed to the cruder comedy landscape that followed, often appreciate these moments as charmingly retro rather than off-putting. Similarly, characters like Yogurt, Brooks' Yoda parody, were initially criticized as too on the nose, but are now celebrated precisely for their unsubtle approach. Perhaps most fascinatingly, time has revealed details about Spaceballs that enrich its legacy. Few viewers in 1987 knew that George Lucas had actually given his blessing to the project, with the single condition that no official merchandise be sold, a delicious irony given the film's famous merchandising satire. Brooks honored this request despite the potential profits, demonstrating a respect for his satirical target that transcended financial opportunity. This behind-the-scenes gentleman's agreement adds poignancy to the film's mockery of Star Wars commercialization. Another hidden detail concerns the original ending. Early scripts featured a much more elaborate finale where Lone Star would use the Schwartz to transform into various creatures before defeating Dark Helmet. Budget constraints forced a simpler conclusion, but concept art for these transformations exists in production archives, representing a rare instance where financial limitations may have actually streamlined the comedy. Perhaps the most remarkable evolution in Spaceballs, reception concerns its predictive qualities. Brooks' meta-humor, particularly scenes where characters acknowledge they're in a movie, seemed merely quirky in 1987. Yet this self-referential approach anticipated the increasingly meta-nature of modern blockbusters decades before Deadpool made fourth wall-breaking mainstream. Similarly, the film's mockery of excessive merchandising proved increasingly prophetic as franchise tie-ins dominated entertainment marketing throughout the 1990s and beyond. The ultimate vindication came years later when many original critics revised their assessments, acknowledging the film's comedic craftsmanship and cultural staying power. Spaceballs had accomplished something remarkable. It outlasted many serious films of its era through sheer quotability and genuine affection from fans who discovered its pleasures on their own terms, away from critical pronouncements. The enduring legacy of Spaceballs extends far beyond its status as a Star Wars parody. Over 3 decades since its release, Brooks' sci-fi comedy continues to influence filmmaking and resonate with audiences in ways that transcend its original context. To understand its significance, we must examine how this seemingly silly spoof became a legitimate cultural touchstone. Most notably, Spaceballs helped establish the template for the modern film parody. Unlike the sketch-based approach of earlier spoofs, Brooks created a coherent narrative that functioned as both comedy and genuine space adventure. This blueprint directly influenced later successful parodies like Galaxy Quest, 1999, which similarly balanced affectionate mockery with original storytelling. When Galaxy Quest director Dean Porasot needed to create a film that simultaneously parodied and celebrated Star Trek, he frequently cited Spaceballs as his guiding inspiration for tone and approach. The film's quotability factor remains perhaps its most visible legacy. Lines like ludicrous speed, "I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate," and "May the Schwartz be with you," have permeated popular culture, referenced everywhere from The Big Bang Theory to Family Guy. This linguistic infiltration extends beyond entertainment, with ludicrous speed becoming common shorthand for extreme acceleration in contexts ranging from technology articles to sports commentary. Few comedies can claim such widespread integration into everyday vocabulary. Perhaps the most ironic aspect of the film's legacy lies in its merchandising. Brooks' brilliant parody of Star Wars commercial exploitation, Spaceballs the Flamethrower, eventually manifested in reality. Despite the initial agreement with Lucas to limit merchandise, the film's growing cult status eventually led to official Spaceballs action figures, apparel, and collectibles. This real-world manifestation of the film's jokes represents a unique meta-commentary Brooks couldn't have anticipated. The parody became the very thing it mocked, yet somehow remained true to its satirical spirit. The film's self-referential humor feels remarkably prescient in today's entertainment landscape. When Dark Helmet watches himself on VHS or characters acknowledge the film's merchandising potential, Brooks was pioneering a meta-awareness that now dominates blockbuster filmmaking. From Deadpool's constant fourth wall breaking to the self-referential nature of modern Star Wars content, contemporary franchises regularly employ techniques Spaceballs utilized decades earlier. What seemed like mere comedic devices in 1987 now appear as forward-thinking commentary on entertainment's increasing self-awareness. For modern audiences unfamiliar with 1980s science fiction, Spaceballs somehow remains accessible and funny. This timelessness stems from Brooks' decision to root his comedy in character and universal themes, rather than solely in specific references. Dark Helmet's insecurity and President Scroob's incompetence resonate regardless of whether viewers recognize their Star Wars counterparts. The film's comedy works on multiple levels, allowing new generations to discover their own reasons to appreciate its absurdist humor. In an era dominated by franchise nostalgia and cinematic universes, Spaceballs serves as both celebration and warning. It reminds us that even our most beloved films deserve affectionate mockery. While its satirical elements concerning merchandising and sequel baiting seem increasingly relevant in today's franchise-dominated landscape. When Brooks joked about Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money, he wasn't just making a punchline. He was predicting Hollywood's future. As we look back at this unlikely cultural landmark, perhaps its greatest achievement is simply bringing joy across generations. In a media landscape increasingly fragmented by age demographics, Spaceballs continues to unite viewers through shared laughter at both the ridiculousness of space opera tropes and Brooks' masterful comedic execution. It reminds us that sometimes the films that last aren't the ones that take themselves most seriously, but those that help us laugh at what we love. If Dark Helmet taught us anything, it's that sometimes going beyond ludicrous speed takes you to places no one expected. Which of Brooks' brilliant visual gags still makes you laugh the hardest after all these years? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more deep dives into comedy classics that shape not just film history, but how we think about cinema itself.